When we covered the topic of employee engagement, we stated the brutal fact that employee engagement is in fact rare. One of the best books I've ever read on the topic of leader development is The Only Leaders Worth Following by Tim Spiker. About midway through the book, Tim Spiker covers 3 levels of employee engagement. The first of which are engaged employees. These are highly involved in and enthusiastic about their work and workplace. They are psychological owners, drive performance and innovation, and move the organization forward. Then you have the not engaged categories. These employees are psychologically unattached to their work and company because their engagement needs are not being fully met. They're putting time, but not energy or passion into their work. And then there is the actively disengaged category, or employees aren't just unhappy at work, they are resentful that their needs aren't being met and are acting out their unhappiness. Every day these workers potentially undermine what their engaged coworkers accomplish. Tim's book goes on to discuss the results of a Gallup study, which shows that only 15% of workers in the United States fall into the engaged category. In fact, there are more actively disengaged employees, 18%, than engaged employees. All the while, the not engaged category makes up a majority, 67% of workers in the United States. This graphic gives you a visual indication of this engagement problem using what I call the employee engagement spectrum. The point is that a lack of employee engagement makes for terrible decision-making, purpose, strategy, alignment, and 3S commitments. Why? Because people who are engaged in your work are the most critical element to all those processes. The truth is that most team members who don't fall into the actively engaged part are likely to fall into that middle part of the not engaged. The actively disengaged are usually easier to spot because they tend to cause the most trouble on teams. In those cases, almost everyone on the team knows who they are because of their behavior. Fortunately, the majority of people on the engagement spectrum can be influenced into the actively engaged category. It isn't easy, but when you make something like the working genius a part of role assignments, you'll see a big difference. When you use the working genius model in your team meeting agendas, inviting people with the corresponding genius to contribute to a clearly stated phase of a project, you will enhance, not inhibit buy-in. Get the people part right first before you have any hope of executing results. Earlier we discussed predictors of success and argued that the working genius model proved as the ideal version of that simply because it knew how to engage the right people to do the right work and at the right time. In a well-executed 90-day breakthrough model, it is critical to commit to each change objective, and it is equally important to staff each exercise with the right leaders. When it comes to creating a funnel for decision-making, how do you reach consensus? How do you explore options? Who brings the options? Who clearly defines and states the problems to be solved? Who declares organizational priorities? When it comes to the purpose, strategy, and alignment, you need real leaders to define purpose and healthy, actively engaged people to determine alignment with strategy. Forging the 3S commitments requires a certain combination of aspiration and groundedness. Again, none of these exercises and the appointment of who weighs into them has to do with job titles and has everything to do with working genius profiles. As you know, this is a new model that helps people discover their natural gifts and thrive in their work and life. There are 6 types of working genius. There's the genius of wonder, the genius of invention, the genius of discernment, galvanizing, of enablement, and tenacity. Those are the 6 types of working genius. Now, the question is, what kind of work have you been naturally gifted to do? Now, each of us has 2 areas that are considered our working geniuses. In my case, that's my working genius continuum. That's what's represented in the green there. And then 2 hours that are considered our working frustrations, which you'll see on the slide there represented in red. And then 2 areas that are in the middle that we neither completely find miserable nor completely joyful. These are our working competencies, represented in the gold. Now, what are the working geniuses? The working geniuses are the activities that bring us joy, energy, and passion, and we're good at. Working frustrations are activities that rob us of joy and energy, and we're not particularly good at them. And working competencies are activities that neither feed nor drain us, in which we can do fairly well, but for a limited period of time. Now, there are 3 phases of work. The 6 steps of working genius model rest on the notion that with every project or initiative, there are 3 distinct phases, all of which require different geniuses to accomplish the work. The 3 phases are ideation, activation, and implementation. Now, this is the altitude of geniuses. This starts at the 30,000-foot level and goes all the way down to the ground or 10 feet off of the ground. In the ideation phase, that's where you see the geniuses of wonder and invention having the most input or value. The next phase is activation. These are at slightly lower levels. This is where you see discernment and galvanizing having the most input or value. And then last, as you get towards the ground, you have the implementation phase at 5,000 feet and on the ground respectively, where you see enablement and tenacity are the geniuses that have the most input and value in that phase or altitude of work. And one of the things I think really sets the working genius apart from some of the other models is the team dynamics. It's like, how do you get the different team members to work together based on their working geniuses? One of the benefits of the working genius model is something called the working genius team map, and what you're looking at here is a sample. You see all of the working geniuses, you see a box for each one. They're separated by the responsive geniuses on the left and the disruptive geniuses on the right. And here you have an example of a team and whose geniuses fall in which areas and whose frustrations fall in what areas. And then you see where this team is light on certain geniuses. For in the case that we're looking at here with this particular team, you see that wonder is very underrepresented here. But then you have a whole lot of discernment and quite a bit of enablement as well. When it comes to things like both wonder and tenacity, you see that there are a lot of frustrations represented amongst the team. Speaking of that, if you really want to give your team a gift, really consider a Working Genius Live workshop for your team. It isn't just a workshop, it is a leadership team experience. When you give them the gift of a Working Genius workshop, you give your people the gift of understanding their natural strengths and accelerate your organization's results. Just go to geniusworkshop.live. There you will see a menu of options for the Working Genius half-day event. Pick the one that most works for you. Again, geniusworkshop.live.